Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alicia and today I'm doing a try a chapter video. I'm doing this because Steph from Steph's Bookish World suggested it and I thought it'd be really fun. I selected 5 books that I'm going to read the first chapter of. One of them will be added to my October TBR, and since they're all books that I've had for a very long time, there might be some that I unhaul because I've decided I don't want to read them anymore. I'm going to go ahead and chat through the books real quick. I'm just going to give you the synopsis of what I remember about it. I'm not going to go look up more in-depth information as I'm about to read the first chapter and hopefully get a little bit of an idea about what they're about. But the first book is Alive by Piers Paul Reed. This is a book about the Uruguayan rugby team that crash landed in the Andes Mountains and what the survivors did to survive and that story of what happened. I've already read multiple books about this story. This is the last book that I own about this that I have not yet read, and I would like to get to it. My hesitation with this book, and a reason I'm actually thinking about unhauling this, is because I have already read books about it and books by the survivors. This was not written by a survivor. This was written by a journalist, and I've already read multiple stories about it. I just don't know if I really need to read another one. But I'm going to read the first chapter, see what I think. Next is Spindle's End by Robin McKinley. I know this is like a kid's book. There's a lot of animals and a giant like manor house on the cover, so I'm thinking this is probably magical and like there's talking animals and they make friends with someone who lives in this manor house. Maybe. I don't know 100%. This book was given to me by someone who was unhauling it from their collection, and that was years and years ago. And I haven't read it yet, so I'm gonna see what I think of the first chapter. I do normally try to read through all of the books that I'm given before I unhaul them, if I'm going to unhaul them. Most of the books that I'm given, I try to not unhaul. But since this wasn't like a birthday gift or a Christmas gift, it was just like, hey, I'm getting rid of this book. I feel a little bit less bad about unhauling this if I do end up deciding to unhaul it. But I still would like to give it a shot first. Next up is The Algebraist by Ian M. Banks. This is a sci-fi that I picked up for like $1 at a local bookstore when they were closing and moving locations. So I honestly didn't even really read too much of the synopsis then. I just read a little bit of it and I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. I don't remember what it's about. It has been on my shelf for 3 or 4 years and it's getting to the point where I either need to read it or unhaul it. Next is Illumination by Terry McGarry. This is the same story as the one before, The Algebraist, and will be the same story as the one after. All of these 3 books, these last 3 books on this list, I picked up at one of my local bookstores when they were having a moving sale. And that was 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember exactly which year, but they've just been sitting on my shelf ever since then. And again, it is getting to the point where I need to read these or unhaul them. This one, I believe, is a fantasy book. And it looks like there's going to be some magic in it. It looks like they're doing a spell on the cover. I don't know. I really don't remember what this is about. But again, I want to give it a shot before I unhaul it. And the last book on this list is Crystal Moon, World of Grayham. And this on the cover says readers ages 13 and older. So this is a fantasy, I believe, and it is like a YA, young adult fantasy. I normally don't reach for YA, so honestly I don't have super high hopes for this. But every time I have read the synopsis, it sounds interesting. I then just always forget what the synopsis said. So I'm trusting my past self in thinking that this was interesting. I'm gonna give it a shot. Honestly, this is the book that I'm thinking is the most likely I will end up unhauling of all of these. But There's always potential. I'm going to read the first chapter, see what I think, and I will check in with you guys after I have read a little bit. Okay, I didn't finish the first chapter of this, but I read the first like 7 pages of Crystal Moon. I'm going to unhaul this book. It took a couple pages. Just the setup. So this book has an introduction, and the introduction starts by the author addressing the reader and saying, "Oh, you know, reader, I'm the author. We're stuck in this book. The book asked me to tell you this story." So that was like all fine and good. The writing style feels very middle grade. Like, I was kind of getting Lemony Snicket vibes from this. And it says readers age 13 and older. Like, I would probably enjoy this if I was 13. But then we start the actual book. We start by being introduced to this character, and just the introduction to this character's life was enough to make me like, I'm out. So the book starts by introducing us to this doctor who's a family practice doctor. This family practice doctor practices mixed martial arts 5 hours a day. I've worked with family practice doctors. I've worked in a medical practice for a while. Not a single one of them would have time to practice anything for 5 hours a day. The exception to that rule would maybe be our part-time doctors that we had, because we had a couple doctors who would only come in every other week because they were getting to the age where they were thinking about retiring, so they were slowing down their caseload and would only come in every other week. So maybe they would have time, especially on their weeks off, to practice 5 hours a day. But I just don't think that's realistic for a doctor. Also, this book is like, this doctor is world famous because he graduated high school at the age of 10, finished his bachelor's in medicine at 13, and earned a medical degree before turning 16. So this guy's supposed to be like a child genius prodigy, and he's famous for being a child genius prodigy. Do I know how to say words? The jury's still out. But basically, this guy has been practicing MMA for 5 hours a day. Now he's going to go and fight professionally. And because he's a famous, smart guy, he's on the cover of ESPN magazine before his fight even happens. So all of this like doesn't make sense to me. And then we get the line, like any red-blooded male, Sam was not immune to a beautiful woman. And I was out. I finished like that paragraph and I was like, yeah, okay. Bye. I'm done. This is maybe something that if I was 13 or 14, I would not second guess. But now, as like an adult, I'm like, none of this works for me. The quote about like any red-blooded male, he's attracted to women, the whole tone and like just the whole way that came across to me, the whole thing about it, I'm out. Following a child prodigy who is arrogant and is mad. This character started fighting because he had anger issues, because he wasn't allowed to practice medicine at 16. They made him wait till he was a legal adult to start a medical practice. Like, I don't want to read about a character like that. So, I'm out. Honestly, as you can tell, I had a lot of feelings about those first 7 pages because there was just a lot of stuff that rubbed me the wrong way in there. But now we know, and this one is definitely getting unhauled. Okay, so I read the first part of Illumination, and I think it was actually a prologue. And I'm not really sure what happened. But I think I'm going to keep this book for now. The first part, the prologue, I had a really hard time focusing on it. This does feel like fantasy, and like the writing just wasn't jiving with me right now. And it's something that I think I would need a little bit more attention, a little more focus on. Or maybe I wasn't really supposed to fully understand what was happening in the first part. It is one of those prologues where they just kind of throw you in to the middle of the action. They don't explain what's going on, and you just get to see a scene. And like, sometimes I really like those. This one was just maybe a little bit confusing for me. But the prologue to this was okay. There was some intriguing parts. I think I just was having a hard time focusing. I'm going to hold on to this. We'll see how the other books go, and we'll see if this ends up being what I add to my October TBR. I read the prologue in like the first paragraph of the first chapter for the Algebraist, and I enjoyed it. The prologue, I think, takes place on a different planet with aliens. They didn't specify 100% for sure, but that's kind of the vibe I was getting. The only issue I had with the prologue is it was very descriptive of imagery and like the setting of the garden that the prologue took place in, and stuff like that is a little bit lost on me because I can't picture stuff in my brain. So when they're describing like these paths and these flowers, I did zone out a little bit. But once we got a little bit more dialogue and a little bit like different description where it's not talking about the layout of the space, which is really hard for me to pay attention to because I can't picture it in my brain. I can't picture the space in my brain. So once we like had some more action happening, I definitely started to get really into it. I still have 2 more books to read, but I think this is going to be the one I choose to put on my October TBR. Okay, I read most of the first chapter of Spindle's End by Robin McKinley. I didn't quite finish the first chapter because it is 20 pages, and maybe I'm filming this at the wrong time because I'm kind of having a hard time focusing. But this seems like it would be really fun. The beginning of it talks about a princess who was born and a curse that was placed on the last queen that lived like over 400 years ago. Also, there's magic and fairies, but fairies are like people who have magic, and then there's also magicians. But the magic in here seems really interesting, and it's like the more reliant on water and the more mobile you are, the more the magic affects you. And it seems all kind of weird and quirky, and it seems like it'd be really fun. So this is definitely also in the running for being on my October TBR. We will see. And then I just have 1 more to read, so I'm going to go read a little bit of Alive and see what I think. So I did finish the first chapter of Alive, and so far this is not about the story of the rugby team. It is just setting up context. It's talking about Uruguay, which overall I appreciate because I did live in Uruguay for a while. I loved it, and I love reading about it. But one choice I think he made that's really weird, at least from when I was there, he's referring to this river. He translated the name of the river to River Plate. But when I was there, just because it's called Rio de Plata, and plata is a word in Uruguay they use for like money or silver. So I would tell someone it's more like river of money or river of silver, or just not translate it. Like, I don't think you need to translate the name of the river. It's not that important. Also, River Plate. I read that and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I had to think about it for a second. I was like, oh, I think that's what he's talking about. And that just didn't quite make sense to me. Also, half the chapter is about rugby. I'm like, I don't care. I honestly don't care. So I don't know. I'm not sure about this book still. I think I'm going to hold on to it and maybe read a little bit more of it when I'm in the mood for a nonfiction. I'm not sure how long we're going to get context for, though. And I honestly might just skip the context parts because, like, you don't need to know about rugby to read this book. And I already know about Uruguay. Like, I've spent time in Montevideo. He's talking about these different neighborhoods there. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I've been there. So, like, I don't really need his context because I have my own context. But most of the story shouldn't even take place in Uruguay to begin with, because the plane crash lands in the mountains outside of Uruguay. Anyway, not sure about this one. I also just stacked them up in order that I think I enjoyed them. So on the bottom, we'll start with the one I enjoyed the least, which was Crystal Moon, World of Grayham. As I said, I'm going to unhaul this book because it just was not vibing with me. I just can't do it. And then I think the next one up is Illumination by Terry McGarry. Like, this was fine. I had a hard time focusing on it. I don't know if that's just because I'm having a hard time focusing overall right now because I'm hungry, or if it is because of the writing style. But this one didn't stand out to me as much as the other ones. Next was Alive. Like I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this and if I'm actually going to want to read it for many, many different reasons. But the part I did read, the writer is actually pretty good, at least from the small portion I did read. The context, except for the rugby part. The rugby part was really boring. But overall, he was able to keep me entertained, even though I was reading about stuff I already knew about. Or maybe it's because I was reading about stuff I already knew about. But I did enjoy that. Next, I put Spindle's End by Robin McKinley. I'm actually not 100% sure if this is number 2 or number 1 of what I enjoyed the most. This and the Algebraist both were pretty enjoyable first chapters to read, and both of these are ones I could definitely see myself wanting to read in October. And now I have to make a decision. Unless I just end this video on a cliffhanger and say I'll tell you next week when my October TBR comes out. I actually think I'm going to do that. I'm not going to decide which one of these is going to be on my October TBR right now. I'm going to let it stew for a little bit. And also, if I can figure out how, I'm going to put a question in the cards. I know you used to be able to ask like a poll in the cards. If I can't figure that out, or if you don't want to answer the poll in the cards, leave me a comment. Which one of these two, or honestly, which one of these 4, well, I'm going to open it up. Which one of these 4, Illumination, Alive, Spindle's End, or The Algebraist, do you think I should read in October? Help me make this decision, because I'm kind of leaning towards either Spindle's End or The Algebraist, but I would love to know what you guys think I should read. I realize that a lot of you probably haven't read any of these books, but based on what I've said, I am actually really interested to see what you think I should add to my October TBR. And that's it. That was my try a chapter video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. Don't forget to leave me a comment of which of these books you think I should read in October and any other thoughts you might want to share. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!